coming up.
Out of Sudan, millions have fled the country or are internally displaced. The applications that have been approved by the department, where are these people physically located right now?
Are all temporary residents that come to our country, including international students, required to submit a police clearance certificate and criminal background checks before they enter Canada? It's a very, very simple yes or no question. It's black and white. Yes or no?
You personally, as Minister, intervened with Canada Border Services agencies and chose to stay the deportation of Zain Haq. Minister, can you tell us why you dedicated your scarce resources to this intervention?
Chair.
Well, this is about allocation resources, including the ones you're not allocating.
There is a point of order. Madam Kaibaga.
Thank you, Chair. I hate to be, the bad guy doing this, but we want to get through these questions. There are so many people who are watching in the room here.
Garage. Like and subscribe.
We're working with our partners to expedite all arrivals to Canada under the special measures in 2024.
As we can.
So, Minister, on the Sudan program, it closed as of May 6, 2024. How many applications did the department receive?
That number is in the applications submitted, Mr. Comich, ranges in the 3,600 number. Applications accepted into processing is 2,542, and that includes 5,814 individuals, excluding non-accompanying dependents. We expect that number of expected arrivals to merge into about 7,000 individuals.
Okay. You've announced that the special program, humanitarian program for Gaza, the numbers are increasing. Will you be doing the same with Sudan?
Currently, the programs are different in their nature, one being, in the case of Sudan, aimed towards permanent residency, the other temporary. We'll look at the situation as it evolves. Again, there are challenges within my own department, security partners in actual logistics and getting this done. So these, I believe, are the ones that we have the capacity for in the context, but we have to obviously remain flexible given the conditions on the ground.
So how many of those from Sudan have actually made it to Canada, are physically?
Other than the ones that have come as refugees over the course of the past year that I spoke to in French, under this particular program, there have not been. We expect those landings we're actually doing our best to hopefully secure some of the landings towards the end of this year.
So out of Sudan, millions have fled the country or are internally displaced. The applications that have been approved by the department, where are these people physically located right now?
They can be located anywhere. They could be in Sudan. They could be in Egypt, or they could have, as you mentioned, fled to third-party countries.
Does the department not know where these people are located right now physically?
When we have the applications, we have their location, yes.
That's, so you have the information then, you've...
Going through every location with you, like every application.
Can you provide it to the department? The department provided to the committee?
We could probably provide a breakdown of where those locations are, generally by percentage.
By percentage or by totals? I would like to know the totals by country.
I gave you the total of applications.
One person at a time, because I was giving you the opportunity to directly talk. I would intervene. So one person at a time, because it was very hard for interpreters to interpret. So, Mr. Comich, go ahead, please.
I just want to know if the minister will provide the totals, and will definitely provide it to the committee.
Tell us what you want, and we can tell you what we'll give you.
I would like to know the applications that have been received and approved for the Sudan program, and which country are they in physically right now when their application was approved.
We could certainly give you breakdowns of that.
And I'll hand over the rest of my time, Mr. Redikoff.
Redikoff, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, Section 35(1) of the Immigration Refugee Protection Act says that a foreigner is inadmissible to Canada if they have violated human or international rights, things like genocide, war crimes, etc. The lead prosecutor for the International Criminal Court has requested that arrest warrants be issued for both the defense and prime ministers of Israel on war crimes. Mr. Chair, Justin Trudeau was asked on Friday last week if the government would support the International Criminal Court, and his answer was, quote, the ICJ's proposals are binding, and we expect everyone to follow them as a matter of international law. So therefore, since the ICJ considers Benjamin Netanyahu a wanted war criminal, can you confirm that he will be arrested in Canada?
Honourable Minister.
I think you know MP Redikup that he is not in Canada.
You are the decision maker in this, and I think there's a lot of people that are wanting to know that answer, what Canada considers him to be. The Prime Minister's been very clear that the ICJ's proposals are binding, and so I'd like to know what Canada's position is on that.
Honourable Minister.
I'm not answering a hypothetical question about someone who isn't in Canada, nor should a minister comment on who will or will not be arrested. And it's up to the authorities in Canada to apply the law. I don't think you want ministers arresting people.
So, in the U.S., they've made this determination. They've said no, he would not be arrested. Israel has a right to defend themselves. France, on the other hand, has said yes, that he is a war. Are you saying that this has not been discussed? There's been no thought put into this? You haven't been privy to those conversations? Is Canada not on the ball with this? We're not asking this question. We aren't preparing for this.
I have not been privy to a conversation as to whether Mr. Netanyahu, in the event he comes to Canada, would or would not be arrested. That's correct.
So you're saying that on this issue that's in the news every day, people are talking about it all around the world, including in Canada. People are asking, this is leading the news in terms of what's going on right now in the war in Israel and the Palestinian war. There have been no discussions in cabinet, in your circles, with the Prime Minister, with anybody about this issue and how Canada would deal with this ruling from the International Court of Justice.
Honourable Minister.
The ruling was issued a couple days ago. There hasn't been a cabinet meeting since then, and I told you I haven't been privy to a discussion specifically about your highly hypothetical question.
How is it that the U.S. has already determined this, France has already determined this? Canada used to be a leader in the world. Apparently now we're not. We always seem to wait till the last minute to make decisions on just about anything. There was a time before this government when Canada was respected in the world with the way that we led, the way that we would show our leadership in the world, and yet this government seems to wait to the last minute to do everything. And this, to me, is another example of a case where there has been no thought put into this. Is that true?
Honourable Minister, the time is up. You can respond briefly, please.
I think the implications that you're suggesting are true, but that was a bit of a rambling statement with the question, is it true? So I don't think I can qualify it anymore. Thanks.
So it's a simple question, yes or no answer. Are all temporary residents that come to our country, including international students, required to submit a police clearance certificate and criminal background checks before they enter Canada? It's a very, very simple yes or no question. It's black and white. Yes or no?
So first, let's make a couple things clear. I don't tell you what questions to ask. Don't tell me
yes or no question,
Don't tell
Minister.
me what kind of. Don't tell me how to answer those questions.
Let's hear your answer for the question.
Thank you. First of all, we do criminal verification by doing biometrics on people. That means taking their fingerprints. We search databases, partner databases, including security partner databases, and as well as the RCMP. And we have a number of cascading questions for anyone that wants to come in to Canada to assess whether they go to secondary screening. Now, on the issue of police certificates, we do not, as a routine matter, require those for temporary residents. The next question you should probably pose is how reliable are those police certificates? I think you would agree with me.
I have limited time, Mr. Chair.
Please go ahead. I started the watch.
Sorry, I understand how the program works, and my question is to you. You made a statement a few weeks ago to the media when the media clearly asked you, are criminal background checks done? And you said yes. And when the media asked, how does that work? You said if they have a criminal background check, if they have a criminal background, that they're not allowed to the country. So now you're telling me that police clearance certificates and background checks at the country of origin are not completed. Is that true?
I think your premise is that police certificates are the starting point and the be-all and end-all of a comprehensive security check, which they are not. I think you would agree with me that a Hamas-issued security certificate or police certificate would not be acceptable for someone exiting Gaza. Do you agree with me?
You'll have your chance, Minister, to ask those questions when you're on the other side of the bench. But my question is more simple for you: is that you misled the media and you misled Canadians when they were asking you a point-blank question. So the question is very simple: did you purposely mislead Canadians, or were you not competent enough to say that during the time the media asked you that? So which one is it? Are you misleading Canadians, or were you incompetent and you didn't know your file, your process for your old file?
So you're new to this place, MP Khanna. You are making a lot of assumptions. I think perhaps you have fallen victim to the algorithms of your chief. The reality is, Minister, I did not mislead
Point
anyone.
of order on this, Minister? I mean, to the Chair.
Stop the watch, and there's a point of order.
I've been elected to this House for about a year now, and regardless if I've been here a year, 10 years, or 15 years, the Minister should not be questioning my competence on the file. Clearly, he didn't have the answer when the media asked him these questions. He clearly misled Canadians, and now he's throwing accusations back at me, saying I'm not informed. I think you should go back and read his ministerial department notes, and maybe even listen to the predecessor who said that they were not done earlier. So before you start throwing accusations, please read your own documents.
I would ask Honourable Minister, irrespective of how long we are in this House, we should not refer that, and we should respect, and I agree with Mr. Khanna. I think those comments are not appropriate, and I would give the floor to you, Mr. Khanna. Go ahead for the question.
See, Minister, on the website, it clearly states that police clearance certificates are not mandatory. Your predecessor, Sean Fraser, the Minister of Immigration, now Housing Minister, who caused this housing crisis because of his reckless policies at the time when he was Minister, himself has said that police clearance certificates and criminal background checks at the country of origin are not mandatory. So why did you tell the media that question when they asked you point blank?
Mr. Khanna, so Madam Kaibaga, please go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that we have a visiting member today. All of us want to get through the Sudan and Gaza questions. Can we stay on relevance, please, Mr. Chair?
Thank you. I will go to Mr. Khanna. Mr. Khanna,
absolutely. I think it's irrelevant because it's with the integrity of our system. So it's a very general question I'm asking for this program. Can the minister let me know how many Canadians have been let into Canada that have submitted police clearance certificates and criminal background checks before entering Canada?
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Honourable Minister.
Point of order.
Just a minute. I will go to Madam Kaibaga, please.
Thank you.
Does the minister have the answer to this?
Just clarifying with the clerk, can you just reread for the rest of all of us to know what the subject of the conversation today is so that we can stay on that? We want to get to our questions as well.
That's fine, Madam Kaibaga. I will go to Minister. Minister, please respond to the question put by Mr. Khanna.
Well, when you become resident, you obviously have to provide those types of checks. But for temporary residents, I never said, and this is where you are misleading people, Mr. Khanna, and your colleagues, that police certificates were required. I said we did verification. That's what we do. That is true. If you assume the contrary, you assume all the responsibility and liability with respect to that if you make those statements outside of here.
So you confirm, so, Minister, you're confirming that police clearance certificates and criminal background checks are not done for temporary residents entering this Canada?
I have never said that certificates are required for temporary residents. They may be required if an officer decides to do so as part of a cascading security screening. None of your colleagues should pretend that I ever made that claim. And if they do so outside this place, there are consequences.
And so how many of those that have been let into Canada, temporary residents, have had to submit police clearance certificates? How many?
Please respond briefly.
You would have to ask over what time period. You would have to ask which categories and which officers have asked for further police certificates. You're assuming that police certificates are the be-all and end-all, and in particular in the case of the individuals in question in the context of police investigation, I'm not going to speak further, but you could imagine how unreliable those certificates would be were they have been required. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khanna.
Could the minister tell us how many more applications will be processed as a result of the announcement today?
So I gave you that number leading up till May 20th. I would have to check how many individuals that translates into.
Okay, so by my calculation, based on your numbers, there's a difference of 583 codes, and based on the application numbers that were approved, by my calculations, 2,197. So maybe officials can confirm that at a later time then, so that we know how many more applications will be processed. Could the minister explain, do you actually need to have a code to be issued to get a TRV?
So not necessarily. Again, I broke down for colleagues at this committee the humanitarian visas for those that didn't have codes or others. That adds up to something that is different. So you don't necessarily, but you still have to go through the process of screening.
Got it. So you don't have to have the codes, but yet people were told basically you have to have the code, and people were just desperate to get onto the portal to apply to get the code. But turns out if people can manage to find a way, however they can, to cross the border, they don't need the code, and then they can get a TRV. So officials have been telling, or some families have been told, that they should apply for a TRV outside of the special immigration measure. And the minister just confirmed that they don't need a code. So families feel betrayed. I hope the minister understands that. And precious time has been lost as people waited to go through this process when this process got them nowhere. Because not one person under this process has been able to get to safety. But people who managed to get outside of the process are now being able to move along. So I guess my question to the minister is this: how many duplication of applications are there? And how much, because of the wasted time, how many lives have been lost?
Minister.
I think you're presuming a lot of things to come to that conclusion.
Well, actually, I'm not. I've talked to family members who's lost lives.
One person at a time, please. I will
don't
go to
know
the
as
minister.
a result of this process, as you know, there is a war in place. We are doing our utmost to bring people to safety. If people have left with a code, then we are able to process them. If they have left without a code and they are eligible under the program, we are doing our best to process them. And if they are still stuck in Rafah or elsewhere, we are doing our utmost to advocate for their safe exit. To the best of my knowledge,
I'll quote, "There is no doubt that Canadian citizenship is highly valued and recognized around the world. We want citizenship to be fair, accessible, with clear and transparent rules. For all we've seen in the immigration process, programming announced to aid with the emergencies in Sudan and Gaza, it's safe to say that announcements made here in Canada by your government don't mesh with the operational realities that would enable migrants from these two conflict areas. Operationally, you don't have solutions. Not for lack of trying, you say? We know that any government faces resource constraints and that you have to make choices. So the contrast of your inaction on these humanitarian files is stark compared to where you have chosen to take action. And you personally, as minister, intervened with Canada Border Services agencies and chose to stay the deportation of Zain Haq. Minister, can you tell us why you dedicated your scarce resources to this intervention?
Honourable Minister.
There's a lot to unpack there. First, I will note for this committee that we are not talking again about the devastating situations in Gaza and Sudan. And I do not comment on individual cases.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Well, this is about allocation resources, including the ones you're not
just a minute,
allocating.
there is a point of order. Madam Kaibaga.
Thank you, Chair. I hate to be, the bad guy doing this, but we want to get through these questions. There are so many people who are watching in the room here and online who want to get the answers on Gaza and Sudan. Can we please get the relevance on the questions of our colleague?
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable Member have the time, 5 minutes. It's up to him how to utilize. So I will give the floor to...
And this is about allocation of resources,
which
includes the resources that aren't being allocated to Gaza and Sudan. So it's about accountability, Minister. In your own words, clear and transparent rules, the quote I read. You're responsible to Parliament. Your intervention under the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act is answerable to Parliament. Yet here is your response to the question asked of you on this matter on the floor of the House of Commons. You said these are not matters we talk about publicly, much less on the floor of the House of Commons. Parliamentarians disagree. Your responsibility under Section 50 of the IRPA is not a personal right. Maybe you were caught off guard when the question was asked of you in the House of Commons. This is your opportunity today to correct that. Why did you intervene in the deportation order of Mr. Zain Haq?
And I would highlight for this committee the patent disregard for those two humanitarian situations in Gaza and Sudan exemplified by the line of questioning posed by conservative members that have nothing to do with the matter at hand. And so using them as a hook to answer the question for their own sound bites is, I think, typical of what we are facing as a conservative
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Let me ask the question in a different way, because you aren't allocating the proper resources, because you're misallocating them. Mr. Zain Haq is in Canada on a student visa. The rules for maintaining status with a student visa require abiding by Canadian law. Clear and transparent rules, the ones that aren't available for Gazans and Sudanese. Mr. Haq broke Canadian law 10 times plus a contempt of court order. Do you think this case warrants your intervention more than intervening with Gazans or Sudanese refugees?
Again, these two parallels are disgraceful. If you have a question to ask me about a particular case, I think you have plenty of opportunities to ask me outside a committee meeting that is dedicated to saving the lives of Gazans and Sudanese.
Well, thank you. You've had months now to save lives, and you've sat on your hands in many respects. You're allocating resources badly. But let me quote the court ruling against Zain Haq. Mr. Haq has shown disdain for the rule of law, and he's publicly encouraged others to break the law while publicly celebrating his arrest. Minister, I only get so many chances to ask these questions of you.
Hold on, Mr. McLean. I would go to Madam Jahid.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, a point of order on relevance. We are here to talk about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and Sudan. The Conservatives seem to not to care about them because they want to talk about something else. So it's really very important that we keep this meeting to the relevance.
Thank you very much, Madam Jahid. As I said, the honourable member has 5 minutes and he has only exhausted 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Mr. McLean, please go ahead.
Well, I'll check that in the time, but no, I do have questions to ask the Minister about his allocation of resources here. Clear and transparent rules, Minister. Zain Haq is a temporary resident in Canada on a student visa and a repeat offender, yet he doesn't even attend his designated learning institution. How many criminal offenses does it take to make a non-studying foreign student eligible for legitimate deportation order?
Sir.
Again, the decision whether to deport or not is not mine to take, nor should it. The individual circumstances of a case are not ones that I would comment publicly on.
Minister, you're intervening on behalf of a criminal that's been convicted in Canada, but you won't intervene in making this process better for Sudanese or Gazan refugees. This is a choice you are making. Canadians, people that are waiting to get into Canada, want to understand why you're making these choices. Can you please explain to Parliament, to Canadians, to this committee, why you've allocated resources to keeping criminals in Canada rather than abetting getting refugees into Canada?
Minister, the time is up. You can respond briefly.
And I would say in response that you are weaponizing the situation in Gaza and Sudan, and indeed the families behind us, to make a petty political point.
The president of the Canadian Sudanese Community Association told the CBC that he doesn't understand the rationale for the cap. Have you been in touch with that association in regards to their concerns?
Honourable Minister.
The entirety of the program was devised and worked with and through umbrella organizations that I believe include that organization.
And have you spoken to them? And if so, what was their concern?
Jack, we worked pretty closely with a number of those organizations to devise the policy in the first place.
I'll take from that you haven't. But so given the tragic reality that Sudan has become the world's biggest displacement crisis, what's the IRC's projection for the uptake of the family-based permanent residence pathway for people affected by this conflict?
I believe, well, as you know, and as I mentioned to the team, the program filled up very quickly within the last 3 months.
I'm just going to turn it over to my colleague for one question.
Mr. Comich, go ahead, please.
Mr. Chair, how much time do I have?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. So I wanted to ask you, Minister, in exchange with one of the Liberal MPs, the question was asked about the paying of smugglers and bribes by certain people to get across the border. And you said in your response, I won't condone it, but I understand. Are you aware that under the IRPA Section 362C, that committing an offense that would be an offense in Canada makes a person ineligible then to obtain a visa, and it's an offense in Canada to pay human traffickers under Criminal Code Section 279. Would those people then be denied a visa to come to Canada?
Honourable Minister.
That isn't the case, no. We would perhaps ask additional questions, but again, you're asking us to hold in judgment people that are trying to stay alive and safe.
So are you saying that Section 362C will not apply to anyone who is paying a human smuggling network, a criminal network, to come to Canada, whether from Sudan, Gaza, or anywhere else?
Honourable Minister.
You're making a lot of presumptions about the paying of these amounts and who they went to. In various shapes or form, this organization has been described as executive travel services, or in the context of this, quite usurious extortion of people looking to leave a desperate situation. So I think that would depend on the circumstances at hand. But again, would you deny them that right simply because they tried to save their lives by paying some money?
So, Minister, you're speaking of a specific organization. Are you speaking of Hala Tourism and Consulting?
Yes.
I'm speaking more broadly, beyond just this particular organization, because I don't know exactly who they are. They were mentioned in a Toronto Star article that has the title, King of the Crossing, the man selling away out of Gaza. I'm talking more broadly of all criminal networks. Are you saying that Section 362C of the IRPA is in abeyance, like the department will not apply? You're the minister. Are you saying you will not apply this particular section?
Honourable Minister.
I'm not saying that at all. What I said is that I took a particular set of facts that you presented to me, refuted to them, and then you started to generalize about something that has nothing to do necessarily with the case at hand. So I'm just asking you the question.
Well, Minister, you're issuing visas, so that is literally your job. You have a department to help you with that. The IRPA, passed by Parliament, tells you that you cannot issue a visa to someone who has committed a criminal act outside of Canada, just committing the act, not being convicted of the act. You're saying you're not going to apply the law. I'm asking you a legal question. You are the minister responsible for the file. You've shown before in other questioning that you either don't know your file or you're not caught up on your file. So I'm asking you, this particular section of the act, will it apply, yes or no?
Honourable Minister, time is up, and you can respond briefly.
The legal answer is that we follow the IRPA.
Thank you very much.
Put on the record that as we are talking about the crossing at Rafah, it's really important to mention that today the news is that there is burning everywhere. Gazans are under fire. They're burning. They're dying. There are babies that are beheaded. The images are horrendous. And I don't wish this upon anyone, and I would hope that in the right conscience, if the minister had to save a life, he would choose to save a life versus using some legal jargons that we are talking about here today. Minister, you increased the cap from 1,000 to 5,000 today. Can you talk about whether this cap is per application or if it's per person?
In this case, it's per person.
And can you explain to us what is the desired success of this new 1,000 limit that you've set?
5,000 limit? Well, we want to get those people out, and we want them to be safe, and we want them to take temporary refuge for the period in time covered by the policy, which is 3 years. Obviously being flexible, but now the priority is just to get them to safety.
And if you can just help us understand the relationship between the Egyptian government. As other colleagues have asked, I have not heard a number of people who have been able to cross through the Rafah border. And now we're seeing that people are literally burning in these refugee camps. What is our relationship to be able to get things moving on this border?
Well, I think regardless of the views of the two governments that control the exit from Rafah in various situations, we owe it to the people that we are trying to save to maintain diplomatic relationships, maintain lines of communication, even when we disagree vehemently with some of the actions being taken, and understanding that our public statements do have impact on the ability to deploy a policy like this at times. So that's the reality of trying to save people in a war, and that's the reality that we have to compose with. So yes, I am in contact with the Israeli ambassador, with the Egyptian ambassador in particular, and our teams work together to coordinate this policy to the extent it's accepted, and when it is, to get people issued visas in a prompt fashion. Those that are in Cairo, we have a good working relationship with the Egyptian government to make sure that we have visas for the people coming in to process visas, and then their cooperation to make sure that we can keep tracking people so that they can actually get to Canada once the visas are issued.
This current, I guess, special measure right now is a temporary resident. So I heard previously that for other people that when it's permanent, they can stay. If it's temporary, I think someone in the room asked, maybe my colleague Zahid had asked, what is the plan for the people who come here through the TRV post, if Canada's not playing a role in or maybe doesn't have a future in playing a role in bringing Gazans back to Gaza when they want to go back, what is the plan after? Is there a plan to extend, as we've done for other measures, for like Ukraine, for example?
Look, you're speaking specifically about the Gaza program. The Sudanese program is a permanent resident program. The Gaza program was designed specifically as a temporary resident program for 3 years, not knowing what the outcome of this would be, for a number of reasons. And I think they're very important geopolitical considerations, particularly some of the rhetoric around the emptying of Gaza and the perception that Canada would be participating in that. Quite the contrary, we're participating in trying to save lives. That is the reason principally that we did not make it permanent. Obviously, we're not sending anyone back to a war zone, and Canadians would judge us quite severely if we even purported to do so. Given the geopolitical considerations, I'd just say that let's assume at some point that this will come to an end. We will do our utmost to make sure people can repatriate if they so choose.
I just had to ask because I think the confusion is there when it's a temporary measure. Just back on the Sudan question, I'm not going to ask many of the questions that have already been asked to you because I've sort of picked up on the answer, but under what circumstances would the department consider increasing the cap that we have right now?
I think first and foremost, the situation on the ground. Second, an important consideration because of limited resources, which are always a consideration, the logistics of trying to make these programs effective and implement them so they are and have a measure of success, but largely looking at our humanitarian commitments. And everyone knows that the catastrophe that's going on in Sudan is largely a forgotten war by the international community. Watching that quite closely, probably more closely than has been up to date.
Has this measure been of effectiveness? Like, is it meeting the targets or maybe the desired goal that you had?
I don't think anyone should be happy until people are here. All of the people are here, and we've ironed out some of the challenges in logistics in getting people here.
Mentioning those, Mr. Minister?
Well, challenges in making sure we keep track of where people are, making sure they're safe, making sure the application process is fully performed. It's very challenging to get biometrics done in an area that is still under constant attack or threat to populations. So making sure that we are being flexible in the context, as well as all the other measures that we've done up to now to make sure that thousands of Sudanese have been welcomed in Canada since the time the war broke out.